Hi, I'm Jim McGuire, and tonight we're going to have an art show with the local Putnam artists. We have some wonderful people that gathered tonight to show their artwork, and I will also interview them, and I think you'll really enjoy it. So just sit back and enjoy the show. Hi, we're with Ned Moran here from the Rock and Roll Roots Museum in Putnam County. Hi, Ned, how are you?
Jim.
Good to see you, Ned.
Nice to be here.
Thanks for coming to our studio to talk about your museum.
The museum is known as the Avalon Archives, the Museum of Roots and Rock and Roll. And it's a tribute to musicians through art and education. And it's dedicated to all the people that lost their lives on 9/11 at the World Trade Center, especially the 343 firemen. I'm a retired fireman, so we all knew some of the guys that got killed down, the men and the women. And the farm is located at or the museum is located at the Tillyfoster farm on Route 312 over in Brewster.
How long have you been there now, Ned?
We've been there almost 2 years. We spent a few months getting the place ready and opened up probably towards the end of 2009. And we're open on weekends, Saturday and Sunday, from noon until 4. And during the week by appointment for civic groups and the Mental Health Association and students. And the admission is free. We're a nonprofit under the Preserve Putnam Foundation that's headed up by George Whipple.
I see. Did you have another museum before at another location?
We had a little place out in Kent Cliffs back in the 90s. And I did a couple of major exhibits there, and that's how I got to know George, and he became aware of my collection. And then the property was sold, so we bounced around. We were in Beacon for a while and in Stormville for about a year and a half. And then we were invited to the farm. And the idea is to bring tourism into Putnam County so we don't have to develop all of the beautiful open spaces we have in this county. I brought some selections from the museum to give you an idea of what we have there. So I'm just going to show a few of them one at a time.
That'd be great. I'd like to see.
This is an album that was made in 1970 by Bob Dylan called Self-Portrait. And Dylan used to come to Putnam a lot. And inside the album is a picture of Bob Dylan at the Perry Farm on Peekskill Hollow Road. And it was taken by his friend John Cohen, who was a musician and a photographer. And he was also the professor of visual arts at SUNY Purchase. Back here, this is the Lifetime Achievement Grammy that was awarded to the band, the group that used to back up Bob Dylan, in 2008. And this went to Rick Danko, the bass player, who passed away in '99, and his wife, who is a friend of mine, said to put it in the museum. Behind us here is a painting of John Lennon done by Richard Fujeta, who lived in Carmel for many years. These days, Richie paints backgrounds for Broadway plays. I think they have a big warehouse in Yonkers, and they paint stage backgrounds there.
That's beautiful. Wow. Yeah.
This is an unpublished photograph of the Beatles that was taken at the Warwick Hotel in 1966 by Fred W. McDarrah, who was considered the dean of rock photographers, and Fred passed away about 2 years ago at the age of 80. This is a poster from the Fillmore West in San Francisco, and the heart of our collection are all of these original posters from the Fillmore and another venue called the Avalon Ballroom. This is with the Buffalo Springfield, and it's signed by Stephen Stills and also Dickie Betts. You can see down here there was an opening act, Hourglass. Hourglass later became the Allman Brothers Band. This is a picture of the King, Elvis, in his leather suit at the 1968 comeback, which was televised, and you couldn't have a show without Elvis. This is a photograph of Duke Ellington that appeared in Look magazine in 1957, and it was taken by Charlotte Brooks, who was a local photographer, and Charlotte Brooks was the only female photographer for Look magazine, and photographed many celebrities, sort of like the Annie Leibovitz of her day. This is a photograph of John Lennon at his last recording session about 6 weeks before he was killed. and it was taken at the Hit Factory in Manhattan, which also no longer exists. Okay, this is from the other venue in San Francisco. This is from the Avalon Ballroom, and it's a poster of a show by the Velvet Underground, and also on the bill is Charlie Musselwhite, a great harmonica player who recently made an album with Cyndi Lauper. She did a blues album, and Charlie's on the album with her.
Very nice. I was going to ask you, in the museum, I was there myself in the museum a couple of weeks ago, and I was really impressed, Ned. How many pieces do you actually have there of memorabilia?
Over 1,000.
Oh, wow.
Over 1,000, and we're creating a library that's going to be for everybody. We now have about 6,000 vinyl albums and hundreds of books on music and videotape, and everybody will be welcome to use this, this library for research or entertainment or whatever they want to do.
I noticed you have, what, 6 or 7 rooms there?
Yeah, there are 6 rooms.
And does each room have some kind of a special purpose for a famous artist or something you want
Well,
to
we have different themes, like there's a shrine to Elvis, and there's a whole section on the blues, and another section on the posters from San Francisco, which were all hand-drawn and before computers and digital work, and we get a lot of art students that are interested in looking at the original posters. And then we have the first room is for musicians that are connected to Putnam County. Pete Seeger, who is a folk icon, his grandfather's farm was in Paterson, so Pete, when he was a young guy, would come to Paterson. John Cohen, the guy who photographed Bob Dylan, had a group called the New Lost City Ramblers, which was formed in 1958. I just talked about Bob Dylan. Tom Malone, who you can see every night on the David Letterman show, was an original member of the Blues Brothers, and also he was the musical director for Saturday Night Live, and both of his daughters graduated from Carmel High School. Captain Lou Albano, who is a friend of ours, recently passed away, and Lou appears in a couple of the Cyndi Lauper videos, and there have been songs written about him. Isak Perlman, the noted violinist, lived out in Kent Cliffs for many, many years. Jay Unger, who wrote the theme song for the Civil War series by Ken Burns. It was called A Show Can Farewell. Great violinist, and he lived in Putnam Valley. David Amram, of course, the conductor and composer, wrote the original score for The Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra, yes, and also Splendor in the Grass with Warren Beatty and Natalie Wood. The B-52s lived in a big house on Lake Mayapack and wrote some of their hits there. Don McLean, famous for American Pie, lived in Garrison. Richard Butler from the Psychedelic Furs and also an artist, lives in Cold Spring. Then we have Fanny Crosby, who was from Brewster, and she wrote 10,000 hymns before 1900. A lot of people don't know about her. George Whipple told me about Fanny. Julius Baker, a world-famous flautist, lived in Brewster. Richie Scarlett, a local rock and roll hero that a lot of people remember, now plays with Mountain. And John Carigliano, he's also a composer. He wrote the score for The Red Violin, a movie a few years ago, lives out in Kent Cliffs. And that's some of them, and there are others, but I just wanted to...
Wonderful. I was going to ask you, how did you first get into memorabilia? Could you tell us about, as a young man, what happened?
Yeah, when I was a teenager, I used to collect 45 records and 78 records, and when I got into high school, I started to sing doo-wops with friends of mine in high school. And then later on, when I went to college, I got into Bob Dylan and folk music and played a little guitar. And then I guess about 1966, I was in a rock and roll band, but nobody wanted to practice, so that ended, and I started taking photographs of musicians and put down the performing end of it and started to photograph musicians.
Did you have a cafe at one time where you actually had performers come?
Yeah, I was, in the 80s, I had a club up in Kingston called Uncle Willie's on Broadway, and I was a fireman in Manhattan for 20 years, and around the time I was retiring, I got involved in this club, and members of the Allman Brothers played there, Dickie Betts and Chuck Lavelle, and people from the Jefferson Airplane like Jorma Kaukonen and Jack Cassidy, and the guys from the band, Rick Danko, Garth Hudson. And so a lot of people that are now in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame played in the club. So I worked with a lot of these guys. Wow. And a lot of the memorabilia I had up in the club, and I was invited to do a museum exhibit in Connecticut at the Museum of Art, Science, and Industry in Bridgeport. And after that show, that gave me the idea of continuing without being in the, my daughter was born, and I got out of the nightclub business, and but I kept my hand in music by doing exhibits.
How did you develop such a love for musicians and rock and roll? You know, you could have went for baseball players or actors. Why was it musicians?
Well, I kind of loved music, and I had a little hand in it. You know, I did a little performing myself, and I know how hard it is, and I know how very few of them make it. You know, maybe 3% of them make it, and the rest of them work really hard and don't get any accolades, so I kind of pay tribute to them.
Wow, very nice. In this type of world we live in today, the pressure of this world, how do you maintain this inspiration in keeping the museum going? What is it like that makes you keep it really going?
Well, it's actually the people that come in, you know, they see what's on the walls, and it sparks memories, and they start talking about concerts that they've been, and it brings some joy to them. You know, it's kind of a depressing state the way we are now, and it brings back memories when things were a little bit lighter, and when they were a little bit younger and having some fun, you know, and that's kind of like an inspiration, you know.
Very nice. Do you have any memories of Bob Dylan?
Well, I saw Bob Dylan many times when he was young in the early '60s. I never met him, but I saw him perform many times, and yeah, he's just he's iconic.
Yeah, he was one of my favorites. Those tremendous ballads he sang and folk songs, really wonderful. Very good. I was going to ask you now, in order to go during the week, you have to call for an appointment to the museum if you wanted to visit there?
Yes. If you call during the week and I'm around, I will meet civic groups, students, anything like that. And but on the weekend we're open Saturday and Sunday from noon to 4.
Very good.
And we're always there. We're going to be closed this July. We have new installations coming in, but we'll reopen August 6th.
Well, very good. I really appreciate you coming, Ned, to the Comcast
Yeah, well, I
studios.
appreciate the chance to talk to people and let them know what's going on over there, and everybody should stop by and say hello, and we'll treat you like kings.
Very good. Well, thanks a lot, Ned.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Okay. Thank you. Listen, thanks for watching the show tonight with the Putnam Artists. I think they're a wonderful group, and if you have any artists out there who would like to contact us, either by phone or email, please let us know, because we're going to have future shows in regards to artists in Putnam County. So, thank you very much for watching.